Welcome to That 30 Show, a podcast where we talk about the good, the bad, and the surprising parts of our 30s. I'm G, and I'm finally 30. I'm excited to find out if 30 really is the new 20, because if it is, then the best years are yet to come.
And I'm David. I'm entering my mid-30s. I used to have no back pain or trouble sleeping, but now I live off a healthy diet of self-help books and dream of being in bed by 10 p.m. every night. Join us each week as we try to figure out together what life in your 30s is all about.
Welcome back to That 30 Show.
Welcome back, everyone. And hey, G, how's your weekend going so far?
It's good. I'm glad I got the extra hour of sleep. It's actually quite nice. I didn't realize it, but then when I woke up, I was like, oh my gosh, it's already like whatever, and it wasn't. So it was good.
Yeah, I had to change the clocks on my microwave and on my stove and on my
How dare they not automatically update? Like,
I know.
There must be Bluetooth ovens and stuff by now that we just don't have.
Are you in support of this daylight savings? You know how like there's so much debate over the years and like, oh, we should get rid of it, or like, no, it's good.
I feel like we talked about this at the last time change back in March.
Oh, we did?
I think so. But no, I'm not in support of it. But I think we talked about how like the states need to get on board with us.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we can't change it. And there's nothing we can do. Because every single time change, they're like, this is going to be the last one. There's never going to be another time change again. So yeah. I mean, I like the first one, even though we get an hour less of sleep, but we get more daylight. Like this one, we do get an hour of sleep, but then the days are just so short now that, I don't know, it's kind of sad.
The worst thing is when you leave for work and it's pitch black.
Yeah.
And you get off work and it's pitch black. And you're just like,
yeah.
Oh, it's so depressing, actually, especially if you're an office job, right? You're indoors. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
And I find that my sleep has like sort of been struggling lately, and I don't know. I mean, it's a chronic problem for me, but I feel like part
more
of it
than
is
usual.
Yeah, I feel like it's the fact that there is less sunlight in the morning, and I need to get what you have, that like sun in the room thing.
Sunlight alarm clock. Yeah.
Sunlight alarm clock. Yeah. The artificial sun in your room.
Well, and especially in Vancouver, like if you go to, I don't know, places where it doesn't rain as much, like during the day you can still get some sunlight and you can go for like a walk at lunch or whatever. But because it rains so much here, it's like dark all day. So
yeah. Well, nice. Thanks for inviting me recently to your Halloween party.
Oh yeah, did you have fun?
Yes.
Question mark.
No, it's fun, but you know there are, you know, anyone who's listening as an introvert, sure I can't speak on behalf of all introverts, but generally speaking, parties, you know, it's kind of give and take in terms of how fun it is.
Did it drain you?
Especially when you don't know a lot of people.
Sure.
Like I did. You know, I had a few friends that I know, and then everyone else I didn't.
Yeah. Well, my friends were happy to meet you. They said it was nice to finally meet you, as they say. So
that's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Like I think I mentioned this. Did I mention this on a previous pod? I keep forgetting. We talked so much now, and but I think like, you know, when I'm younger in my 20s and stuff, I want to put myself out there more and challenge myself, especially socially. I want to, you know, broaden my network, or especially if you are looking for a partner or anything like that, you want to put yourself out there, right? Like increase the amount of chance connections you have. But then now, I'm not old, but in my 30s, and it's much harder to make friends in your 30s. But at the same time, I feel like I'm also much less wanting and needing to make new friends in my 30s.
I think the partner thing is probably big. Like even if the partner thing is probably big, like even if you were in your 30s and you didn't have a partner, you'd probably still feel like you'd want to go out and like socialize and things like that.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've sort of, you know, gone through my phases of having a partner, not having a partner over the past, 5 to 10 years. And I find that oftentimes I'm reflecting when I have a partner, and I'm just like,
you become a hermit.
Thank God I do, because I have no plans this weekend and I'm so lonely and bored, but I'm not because, you know, at least I have that companionship, especially if I'm living with them.
Right.
But if I'm single, I'm just like, oh my gosh, why is no one texting me?
Yeah.
But now I don't notice that no one's, I mean, I'm probably more of a loner than everyone else, but I'm like, oh, I don't really notice that, like, oh, no one's texting me all day, because I don't need that, because I have a partner that I can lean on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Speaking of like kind of things that sort of change, I think in your 20s and 30s in terms of, at least for me, like how much I want to put myself out there, challenge myself. And I think another thing that changes is how much I care about world events, essentially. Has that changed for you at all? Were you, I think on the whole, I was maybe between the two of us, probably, I think the more like nerdy, like, want to read the news kind of person.
Yeah.
So
I think that's fair because I mostly like seeked out. I didn't really seek out. You kind of go more and seek out current events, I feel like, or to read them, read about them.
Yeah.
Whereas mine was more like if it comes up, through like either social media or like a little notification on my phone, I'd be like, oh, okay, this is interesting. But I never really sought that out.
Did you have a shift like I have, which is, for me, it's gotten like less engaged, but for you, maybe it's just like, like, it's never been a curve. It's just sort of flatlining the whole.
Yeah. For me, it might be even a little bit more, actually.
You're more engaged now.
Well, now I think back to like when I was in high school. Do you remember the 24-hour newspaper or the Metro? Do you remember those daily newspapers?
Yeah. I remember that from university. I didn't do high school in Canada, but yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I read that every day. Like every day. So I'd be like super on top of, but that was all like local news. It wasn't really, I don't think there's a lot of like international world news, but I do remember reading that every day. So now I'm like reconsidering, maybe I was more engaged when I was younger, but that's like just reading just to know what's going on. It wasn't like I had any super strong opinions.
So I think we wanted to sort of like unpack this a little bit, at least just between you and I think everyone's perspective and approach is going to be different. So as always, we're just speaking for ourselves. But as everyone obviously knows, like every time I'm, connecting with like I was catching up with a friend and recently, and then I was like, oh, how's it going? And they're like, oh, it's good. All things considered. And even when I go to my staff meetings now, the staff meetings, there's like a sort of acknowledgement of like, it's kind of tough times these days. So, make sure you take care of yourself. Because there's a lot of shit going on in the world, right? It's basically, it's the Middle East conflict, and it's just seems like it's, I don't know if it's like the only thing that people are talking about, but certainly it is pervasive in the cultural discourse.
Well, so this morning, I knew we were talking about this today, so I just did a quick Google search, like what are the big headlines of today or of late? And pretty much every single headline is on some kind of conflict, whether it's the Middle East or whether it's the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Like every headline was about something.
And I want to sort of unpack that between you and I, and maybe you can speak to your conversation with friends or friends, and I can speak to that as well. But just, do we care? Like, not do we care, but like, especially when we go from our 20s, 30s, are there any differences there? Do we care? Do we not care? Why do we care? Why do we not care? And this is definitely something that I've thought a lot about. I think I might have mentioned again in a previous podcast, but I'm actually, even before the Middle East, October 7th and all that happened, I've been more disengaged. I used to watch the news every night almost. I used to listen to a lot more news podcasts. But for a variety of reasons, I've sort of pulled back on that. And I think it's similar to social hangouts. I feel like it's like, I'm sort of reorganizing my priorities and what I feel adds value to my life.
Yeah. And just to be clear, like, I think you were clear, but just to be super extra clear, we're talking about like current events in general. I mean, right now, the most prominent thing in our news is the conflicts in the Middle East and Russia, Ukraine. But we're talking about like current events in general, why we care about them. And
And we're talking about this because it's because of the Middle East thing, because that's such a big topic for a lot of folks. And it's impacting people's like mental health and impacting people's sort of hope for the world, or their how they view their government or their politicians. And so we want to use this chance, because it's such a big part of a lot of people's conversations and thought process these days, to just talk about it more generally. So do you care? How much do you care? Why?
Oh my gosh, it's like put on the spot. Do you care about current events? I do, but I do find myself also not as engaged as I was previously. I think part of that is also just like there's always so much going on now, and it's like kind of the same thing over and over again. So at some point, yeah,
blood and bloodshed and death and destruction and
yeah. So at some point, I think you get like, I don't know. It's not like you're used to it, but it's like
you're numbed. It's
yeah,
numbing, and
yeah.
it's too much. It's too much.
It's like with the whenever they have like mass shootings in the States.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
They have them so frequently now that every time it's like, it's painful to see. It hurts, but it's like it happens so often that you are almost numb to it because it's like, oh, it was another. I think there was one just a few weeks ago, like another major one. So
the mass shooting is a great example, actually, because I think I used to be much more emotionally invested in those. Generally, as I said, I've been much more invested in world events and current events in past years. So when shootings happen, I follow U.S. politics quite a bit, and I would get very emotionally invested and be like, what's going on? Like, what are they going to do about it? And I think the one that just ended it for me was Sandy Hook, which is the one where a lot of, very tragically, many little kids lost their lives in the elementary school. And after that, when nothing was really done about it, I was like, America has, the gun debate is loaded. It's a can of worms. I'm not going to try and open that because I'm not qualified or have the expertise. But just the fact that nothing has changed, it's like, oh, okay, this is the price that you're willing to pay. It's sending your kids off to school and not knowing whether they'll come back on any given day. This is the country you've chosen to live in. Clearly, people don't care enough. Or maybe the political system is broken, so even though people do care, they can't do anything about it. And so I'm just like, I can't get emotionally invested anymore because
it's like a sense of hopelessness. Like,
yeah.
There's nothing.
It's almost like learned helplessness, like that classic psychology experiment where I don't know, I can't remember how it goes, but the rats get like electrocuted, and if they realize that they're not shown a way that they can stop the electrocution, they just don't even try. From the very beginning. Yeah, they just
I feel like empathy can only go so far. Like at some point you just like almost physically cannot, you're still empathizing, but you cannot even physically invest yourself into this anymore. I read this New York Times article a while ago, and I just had it pulled up on like why our current progressive movements have failed. So the three that they were talking about was the Occupy Wall Street movement, the Black Lives Matter, and then the Me Too movement, and how, it got a lot of like support, and it raised a lot of like awareness, but it never really came close to achieving its ambitions. And because there haven't been any major laws passed to, reduce some of the inequalities or anything like that. But instead, a lot of people are aware of it, and it's made impact, but it's not in the way that, like, for example, the civil rights movement or the gay rights movement, how they pass laws and stuff about that. And they say part of it is because it didn't have like a plan or any sort of
what's your end goal?
Concrete plan to change.
What are you protesting for?
Exactly.
What's your agenda? What's your platform? Like, tell me, what are the specific things that you want?
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why it hasn't progressed as much as we want. And I feel like that's a lot these days with like social media. Like there's a lot of posts that go on, and advocacy is important. Outraged. But there's no real concrete, which feeds into the whole like hopelessness feeling, because you're not seeing any like any tangible plans that might change something. So
would you consider yourself idealistic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Because I've talked to a few people over the years who are very idealistic. And what I mean by that is they have this vision for how they think the world could be and should be. I guess more of a utopian ambition for the future. And whether it's realistic or we have the resources to be able to manifest that is not relevant, or not relevant. It is not reason to not aspire to those utopian dreams that these friends that I have have. And I think that's that's one of the from my perspective, as someone who's not idealistic in that way, I think that's actually one of the fundamental differences, that people might not actually understand each other. So there are people who think there is a perfect society and we should strive towards it, and anything less than is not good enough. And there are people who think there is no such thing as a perfect society, and even if there is, it's just not even realistic. And it's like, let's not pretend that we can ever reach a utopian society. So let's like settle for like good enough. And I think people who are very morally sort of outraged or be like, no, blah, blah, blah. It's those idealistic people sort of pitting themselves against the realists who don't even want to try and get society to what this sort of perfect endpoint. And then so these people fundamentally don't understand each other because they don't even agree on what
the end result.
Yeah, the end. What's good enough?
Yeah.
So you call yourself an idealist, but I don't know. Maybe you don't identify with that.
I wouldn't be on the extreme end of an idealistic view. I think probably leaning more towards that side. But I think that's also, one of the reasons why the movements that I was just talking about never really took off too, is because a lot of it was very extreme views. Like there were people that that said like, yes, like we literally mean abolish the police, like like zero police for like they just went to such extreme ends, and then it just obviously never took off because that's not going to happen. So
I really resonate with that. And you know what? Actually, I don't know if it pisses me off because that's a bit of a strong word, but like it sort of makes me feel exasperated when, let's say, the government, right? Whenever they make a policy change and it favors, let's say, the Green Party, let's say they do some environmentally friendly policy, and then they're like, wow, the government's finally doing an environmentally friendly policy. And then activists come and be like, this is not good enough. I'm just like, okay, come on. Like, it's
don't even get me me started on that, because I have to experience a lot of that at work, because
so like you're trying to enact policies that help like fishermen or like
we never make anyone happy, right? Or everyone happy, or sometimes anyone, but because there's so many different angles, so there's no way that you can please everyone. So as governments, as you kind of have to think about the trade-off, because there's no way everyone's going to be happy. Everyone has, you're not doing enough. Anything that you're doing, you're not doing enough to one group. So
what you're saying there actually, again, brings up a bit of a similar, probably, but like another really key gripe I have, which is some people call it the tyranny of the minority. Basically, it's you can't make everyone happy. And so the goal should not be to try to make everyone happy.
Yeah.
Because humanity exists on a bell curve.
Yeah.
That's just how it works. And so let's optimize and maximize for like from the 20th to 80th percentile. And if you're 0 to 20 or 80 or 100, sorry, we're not going to really care.
Yeah. And honestly, you're going to get respect from people that way too. Like when you take a stance, and you stick to it, even the people that don't agree, they might not agree, but they'll respect it.
Yeah, at least you're not pretending to be like, oh, I am actually trying to please everyone. I think everyone should be happy. Why is everyone not happy? We're amazing. It's like, no. We're like, hey, you know what? We're going to do this. And we realize X, Y, and Z are probably not going to like it. We, it's unfortunate that we cannot do this, but this is the best we can do to try and maximize the good for most people.
Yeah.
So I don't like how, like right now, it's like as long as one person, like honestly, in my office, it's like that. If there's one person who doesn't like this idea or this event, like social events, for example, where he's like, oh, let's go bowling, right? And there's one person that complains and be like, bowling's not equitable, whatever reasons, or like bowling's racist. I don't even know why. But and then we're like, okay, we're not doing it. Yeah. Like, what? But like, what if everyone else wants to do it? Like, you one person, like you don't have to go. Just don't go. The criteria is to come up with a social event, for example, that everyone likes. And then so you know what ends up happening? It's just like some lame ass, like a really boring, very vanilla, like coffee gathering. And that's
that everyone is okay with.
Yes. But no one's actually happy with it. But at the same time, no one hates it.
Yeah.
And that's baseline. And it just...
Well, and that's why a lot of people... Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are afraid to also post anything or speak up in like social settings too, because they're so worried about what others are going to say and things like that.
We have forgotten how to maintain relations with people that we disagree with. Yeah. It's like, some people know I like Elon Musk. Does that mean I agree with everything he does or everything he said? No, of course not. I love my parents. I love my siblings. But like, I hate a lot of things that they do.
Yeah.
And they know the shit on me, right?
That happens though, right? Because you get like, if you say one thing, people can often just paint you into that entire bubble and say like, okay, well, you agree with everything then. Yeah. I mean, that happens a lot on the political spectrum, right? Which is not true.
It's what I call the death of the nuance.
It's, I like that. The death of the nuance.
And, when it comes to the Middle East, right, even for the past couple episodes that we've released, I'm wondering like, despite our humble audience, we do have this is a public platform, there's a public voice. Maybe we should like make a statement or we should say something about it. But then I'm just like, no, we don't all need to have an opinion on things, especially when we don't know what we're talking about, which if I can safely say for both you and I, we don't know what we're talking about unless, correct me if I'm wrong, you've suddenly become a Middle East expert overnight. We don't know what we're talking about. So why do we have to have an opinion? I don't have an opinion on it. I don't want anyone innocent to die. That's basically it. That's my only opinion.
Well, yeah. So I see a lot of those like posts and stuff about like where celebrities will come out and say, like, we just don't support innocent lives being taken. And it's like, well, obviously. Like,
but that's weird. I think it's because like everyone is expected to have an opinion.
I don't really understand why influencers and celebrities are really expected to, like, they're expected to post something. I don't really understand that.
I don't understand. And I think Ricky Gervais, the comedian who hosted the Golden Globes like 6 times, he doesn't understand either, because he famously said in one of his epic monologues at the Golden Globes, he's like telling the you love those award ceremonies, maybe you remember this, but he's telling the celebrities like in the beginning in his monologue, he's like, so if you get an award tonight, just come up, thank whichever God you pray to, thank your agent, and just get the fuck off. Like, don't preach to us about anything. You're the last people that I
remember that. Yeah.
But then at the same time, okay, here's the argument, right? The argument is, when you have a voice, when you have a public platform, when you can reach so many people, you have a moral obligation to use. It's the Spider-Man quote, with great risk. Oh my God.
Oh no.
Yeah, but is that a fire alarm?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
I think we could go, because we should just cut it out. No, it happens all the time. I don't think it's anything real. It's gone. Yay.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Told you it's fake. I'm just kidding. It could have been real. Oops.
So we're cutting back because G's fire alarm has finally stopped. She's still alive.
I'm still here. Yay. No fire. Good job. Okay. I don't even remember what we were talking about.
Breaks our flow completely. This
I know.
I'm sorry. Doesn't know we're recording. God.
Yeah. Current events. Come on.
No, I was going to say, I remember I was going to give the Spider-Man quote. I can't remember why, but I was going to, the Spider-Man quote, which is, with great power comes great responsibility. Yeah. Now, why was I going to say that?
Oh, because influencers and
yes,
celebrities
when you have a voice,
posting.
when you have a platform. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's the devil's advocate. That's why people have to have an opinion, especially if they're influential. I don't know if I really agree with it, but that's certainly, I think, one of the main arguments
that's
for
the take.
Yeah. But that's okay, because we have no power, so we have no responsibility.
Sometimes it's also like celebrities posting can act kind of like as a proxy for others to talk about it, though. Because they'll talk about the celebrity's post more like by proxy. They'll get into the actual topic because a celebrity posted about it. So it does generate conversation for sure. But I don't know. I just feel like there's just such an expectation placed on like influencers.
Well, more recently, we had The Rock and Oprah team up to ask people to donate money for Hawaii or something.
My gosh. You donate.
Yeah. It's like, I can barely put my put like food on the table for my family. And
you're the one with the big bucks.
Kind of shit money out your ass. So like, why don't you donate?
Yeah.
So let's bring it back to like the 30s and how that relates to all of this. Because I think one of the things that I would like to make an argument for is, for some people, certainly not all people, I know many people, many friends in their 30s who are very strong advocates for social causes and political causes. But for some people, like myself, I know what I need in my life. I know what I value in my life, and I'm just busy. I'm busy doing my own stuff, and it's not like I don't care, but I don't have time. It's like what you said earlier. I don't have the time, energy, mental ability, or resources to care about everything. Mm-hmm. And so I think, you could say, should you care about some things? Yeah, maybe. But I remember one time my sister told me this, and she's like, "Oh, I have a friend who one time responded to eating meat to vegetarian or something." I was like, "Oh, well, mm-hmm. like, why don't you care about this?" And she's like, "You know what? This one, like, I care about X, Y, and Z. That's all I have the capacity to. Mm-hmm. I'm sure animals are being treated very cruelly, but I can't care about." And I would make the same argument, which is, you care about Ukraine, you care about the Middle East. There's a whole host of other potentially similarly egregious things that just, for example, maybe the mainstream media is just not reporting on, and so it's less visible. You got the Uyghur concentration camps in China. You got the refugee crisis, people drowning in the sea and crossing into Europe and stuff. Mm-hmm. You've got, the opioid crisis that kills thousands of Americans every year. Like, there's so many things that you can say, like, "Oh, you don't care about this, you're not a good person." But there's just so much going on. Like, I can't care about everything. And so, like, what's the requirement? Do I have to pick at least one thing? If I don't, does that make me a good person? Do I have to pick two causes? Like, what's the threshold for you not to call me, like, ignorant and a bigot if I don't care about it?
Well, you do post a lot. Like, I feel like you react to a lot of things.
I'm not really talking specifically about myself. I'm talking on behalf of people who might feel like, do I have to care about this?
Yeah. I mean, I personally find that, like, there's things that people care about. Like, I find it hard to believe that there's a person out there who doesn't care about a single thing. Like, there must be stuff that you care about or have a particular interest in. Those are often the topics that I find that I dig more into, or things that might possibly affect, like, a legislation or something tangible. I find that I look more into if there's something that I can actually do. Otherwise, on these, like, really big
like, what are you
global events, like the conflict in the Middle East, stuff like that, I think it's interesting to have discourse about it with friends. Maybe not necessarily stuff that we can do, but if we can become more educated on it and learn more about it, I think that still is a value, even if you don't speak up on it, or if there's things that you can't particularly do.
Well, I think there's value if it brings you value. But what I'm trying to grapple with right now is that, like, I just don't like the idea of being shamed or being judged negatively if I don't know or don't care about a certain issue that you know or that you care about.
Sure.
I do think my compromise sort of conclusion on this is that we live in a world where when you are contributing to society, I think we talked about this before, we both agree that a meaningful, purposeful life, you're making some contributions to society. And so what does that mean? It means that you are improving society in some way. So there's something that needs improvement and you're improving it. Mm-hmm. I think that's an important ingredient to a life well lived. But I think you have to draw the line somewhere pretty quickly in terms of, these are the things I'm going to dedicate myself to. And, like, the other 99.9%, I don't have the bandwidth, as corporate speak. I don't have the capacity to care. And that has to be okay, I think.
I mean, who really does? Like, if you, I don't know, who really has do you know anyone that is vocal and passionate about every single or, like, a bunch of different causes? I guess I know a few people like that.
Yeah, a couple people. Yeah, they're very opinionated. But then it's like, I could go to any one of them and be like, okay, what about Exhibit X, Exhibit E, Exhibit F? Like, you don't care about those people? It's like, no, you got to pick and choose, I think. Yeah. So everyone, like, choose one or two of your causes. Everything else, shut up about it. You don't know anything. So what's your, do you have a cause? What is, if you had to be a social justice warrior, or not social justice, but, if you had to be, like, a champion.
I find things that pertain to like affect or pertain to children, I care more about. I look into more. So
that's
yeah.
Cute.
Yeah.
Not cute. That's sweet.
Yeah. So that's
like what? Like foster care or what are we like? What's or education?
No,
like what
education or anything. Even, you know, the rate at which like people are having anything like related to children, I find just interesting. Like, adoption or like.
Will you ever adopt? Would you consider adopting?
I think so.
Is it an option?
Yeah, I think so. I just don't think I would choose to like single parent a kid because it just seems like a lot of challenges. But yeah,
when the data is so clear on how it's the benefits of having two parents in the household for a child's development. You know, once upon a time I had this concept and I wrote a personal blog about it, which is it's a moral responsibility for us to try our best to understand and know about the plights and the challenges of people around the world, because imagine you are them. Imagine you are the less privileged and you're wondering, does no one in the world care about us? Does the rich and powerful nations not care that this is happening when they have the power to do something? Why does anyone know or care that my family is dying or that my nation's dying? I don't know. And I was thinking that like the least that I can do as a normal everyday citizen is to care. And maybe those people don't know that I care, but like that's the least I can do is to be informed about what's going on and to know and to not live ignorantly. Mm-hmm. That's a view I used to have. I don't know if I still have it. But I think one of the things that we haven't touched upon that I think is quite key is the word privilege. And that's thrown around a lot, right? And I think a lot of people listening might already be thinking that this whole time. It's like, oh my gosh, David and G, you guys are reeking of privilege. Because for me
to even talk about this.
Yeah. To have, it's a privilege to not need to care.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know. There's a bad taste in my mouth in that argument because it's like shaming me. It's like, yeah, it's a privilege. It's kind of like I'm not going to apologize for, like, let's say my parents worked their ass off to provide a better life for me and now I have a good life. I'm not going to apologize for that.
Well, but I think it says something to recognize it as a privilege still.
Oh, some people, it is. And you know, every day I'm writing my gratitude journal, for example. It's like, you know, what am I grateful for? I'm grateful that I have, like, I think about every day it's cold, or every day I look at the news. It's like, I'm grateful I'm not being bombed on. I'm grateful that I can sleep in a warm and comfortable and dry environment, because I know if I'm homeless, I won't get that. I know if I'm in a war-torn country, I won't get that.
Yeah.
And these are things that I'm grateful for and have the privilege about. But like to be told that like, oh, to even not care about what's happening in the Middle East, that speaks to your privilege. Well, yeah, it does. But like, so like, what?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes.
Right. Period. Okay. Yes, it
does. I don't know that there necessarily needs to be more than that. It's recognizing that you have a privilege and being grateful for what you have and the fact that you have the ability to have the privilege to not have to have it, you know, ingrained in your mind, thinking about it every second of every day. I think that's just, you can kind of leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do your friends in your early 30s, like, what do you notice? Has it been a topic of conversation at all, or?
Yeah, like it'll come up. We talk about it. A lot of the times I think it's exchanging information. Sometimes it's like, you know, kind of a debate back and forth, but a lot of the times it's like, okay, well, you might have read something, teaching others about what you know. Like I find myself also interested in a lot more current events if it's like more local, I think, like that actually affects me or my family or friends somehow. I'm talking about like local government, politics, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. On a global scale, it's a bit harder. Internationally, when it doesn't really affect your country, like it does, you know, economically, maybe politically in some cases, but the stuff that is actually going to impact my life, I would probably care a bit more about it. Versus when I was younger, it didn't really matter because I didn't really affect me that much. It affected my parents, I suppose, like, the economic policies and everything like that. But to me, it was like, whatever.
Yeah. Well, be curious what people think, anyone who's listening. So if there's any feedback on this episode, I'd love to hear it. Like, I'd love to be told why I'm wrong. One more thing I do want to say that I haven't really talked about, which is, I think part of it is, honestly, I don't know, not for everyone, but I think part of it is that there's a certain self-serving, ego-driven desire to feel better than others, to think that you are coming from a higher moral ground. And I think that when we
holier
get
than
into
thou
debates and arguments where we can prove other people are more ignorant or less knowledgeable, it makes you feel like you're a better human being. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from too, to be honest. I think it's people who want to feel like they are being a good person. And I think that's fine if you want to do that, but you don't have to put other people to shame, I guess.
I was just thinking the same thing. Like, I don't think you're ever really going to get people on board or motivated to do something by shaming them into it. Like, that's not really the right tactic, I think. Even if people do, they're doing it because they feel like they're forced to do it, or they're doing it kind of like in a begrudgingly doing it. It's not like that they actually want to. So shaming someone into doing something or saying something or being on a certain side is never really going to work.
Yeah. So I think,
and a lot of it's also performative too. Like,
so performative. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's tribalism, a lot of it too. But, I think it's just, we need to make it more acceptable to say, I don't know, or I don't have an opinion, or I'm not sure. There's a rush or desire to declare your tribe, right? Some conflict happens and it's like, whose side are you on? But it's okay to just, I don't know. And I don't care, maybe.
Yeah. I'm just there. I mean, there's always extremes, right? Like it's not, sometimes you don't have an opinion on everything, but on the other side of the coin, if you don't have an opinion on anything, I mean, that's also like, okay, well, maybe you do want to become more educated on things so that you can form, like, if you have a society where nobody has an opinion on anything, then that's also problematic. So
yeah.
But those are extremes, right? Like,
yeah, it's about not engaging in extremes. I think it's trying to find the.
I've never been for the extreme.
I think the whole conversation, I'm just trying to make an argument against the extreme. I'm not arguing for. I would be the last person to argue for ignorance or to be insular on anything. Mm-hmm. I'm just, as I'm growing up, getting older, changing my life priorities, I'm just trying to have a bigger perspective on the value of knowing, or the value of having opinions on things that you barely understand. And I just think there's very limited value, I guess, is the point.
Yeah. Well, in fact, it can be harmful because that's how misinformation is spread. There's so many, especially through social media, when people can say whatever they want, it can be harmful if you don't actually know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, with the Middle East thing, I have personally spent many hours listening and watching podcasts and interviews about it. So I am very interested. And I think so far we've never stated our opinion, but I think that's sort of the point, which is like, we don't need to, when we don't really know what we're talking about. But they're like, well, we don't need to know what you're talking about to condemn, civilians and refugees being bombed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess so. David
condemns them. It's
I do condemn. I condemn it all. Yeah, it's a tough topic to figure out.
Yeah. Did you hear about Selena Gomez getting a whole bunch of backlash recently? She had to delete her Instagram when she's the most followed person on Instagram or something like that.
No, I didn't.
Did you see about that?
Well,
I think she posted something that said I know people are hurting and I really don't want any of this, but my one post isn't going to change anything. I wish it could. And there was a lot of backlash because she is the most followed person on Instagram. I think that people are like, how dare you think that your one post isn't going to change anything when you have like 300 whatever millions of followers and stuff like that. So she deleted her entire Instagram because there was just way too much backlash.
I just think that even if that is true, let's say even if people are angry at what I've said here, right? Or say that I'm being irresponsible or ignorant, outrage and backlash, this is not what advances society. If you think you have a cause, and you probably do, being angry at Selena Gomez does not do shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It just makes you feel better. It feeds your ego to be angry at Selena Gomez because it makes you feel like you're a better person than her. That's all it does, in my sincere opinion. And maybe that's because I'm reading Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth right now. So ego is very front of mind for me right now. But that outrage and stuff, you're right. You're probably right. Who cares? Do something else with your energy and your time.
Maybe it makes them feel better. I don't know.
Like,
to lash out at someone.
If you think I'm wrong, that's fine. But don't waste your energy making sure that I know I'm wrong. Just go and do what you think is right. Like lead through
Fair
example,
point.
lead through your actions, right? So in a way, it's kind of like maybe I'm being ironic or hypocritical because in a way it's like, well, what's the value of having this podcast and just spouting random opinions if my point is that opinions don't matter? But at least I'm not hating on anyone, I guess. Oh, I'm hating. Actually, I am hating on people. I'm hating on people who hate on me.
Yeah, you're hating on the haters.
Oh God. Okay, I'm just gonna stop talking. I think I've said enough.
It's like being offended by people who are offended.
Yeah. Do you have any last thoughts on this, or kind of how you see our generation or this decade of your life? Like, is this the people in this decade? You're building a family potentially if you're lucky enough to have kids. You're trying to put food on the table. You're trying to like put a roof over your head in this economy.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Like, I think maybe in your 20s, you have a lot more capacity to care a lot about it.
Yeah, when life gets more real, you're just too busy dealing with life.
You're busy with dealing with other things. Yeah, I mean, fair. Like for me, I've said it before on other podcasts too, I'm just not an extreme person. So with anything in my life, I feel like I'm never on an extreme end. I always am like trying to find a balance between everything because I just don't think that being on the extreme end is helpful or conducive to my life. So as with anything, similar to current events and responding to them and whatever I feel about it, it's never on one end or the other. Interesting.
Well, yeah, it's a good chat. It's one of those where I wish there were more voices in this conversation. It's one of those where I wish I could have people push back on me. And so I can sort of understand if what I'm saying makes sense.
Well, so we're really interested in what others have to say about it. So if people have an opinion on it or they disagree, please feel free to post it on social media. No, I'm kidding.
You can
just let us know.
DM us on Instagram. Send us an email at that30showpod@gmail.com.
Yep. I think if there's one thing that you and I both agree with is that we're very open to hearing others' opinions, disagreements, anything like that. I wonder if they can even post it in the Spotify little comment box.
Yeah, the Spotify, there's a Q&A thing, right? It's
yeah.
Like, what do you think about this?
I'd love to hear from you. And maybe we will reflect on people's opinions in a future episode. And with that, the construction has started in my apartment. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's loud jackhammering happening now. Yeah. So the right time to end it.
The last thing I'll say for sure before we say bye is that I hope there will be more love and peace in the world. And it is very sad and tragic anytime there are not just innocent lives lost, but innocent lives lost in a callous, indiscriminate, and evil way. I think it's tough, but definitely sad to see it when it happens. For all you folks who are still listening after all this time, maybe just leave you with the prompt to go and think of 3 things you're grateful for and make it as small as possible. Make it the cup of coffee that you're sipping on. Make it the sunshine that you're feeling on your face. Don't get too bogged down by current events if you are.
Love that. Amen.
Okay, bye.
Talk to you next week. Bye.